Good morning, everyone. It's so good to see you for another week of virtual Sunday school. I hope y'all have had a really good week since the last time that we connected, since last Sunday. It's been kind of wetter and colder than I would prefer because all I want to do is be outside. But it's still been a really chill, good week over here in my house, and I hope it's been a good week at your house as well. So today we're talking about another Jesus story from the book of Matthew, and this one is often referred to as the Great Commission, and we're going to talk about what that means. So it's in the book of Matthew, and it's taken place after Jesus is resurrected, so it's after Easter, and he has appeared to some of the disciples and the women, and he is about to go back into heaven to be in heaven with God, and he's giving the disciples and a lot of the people some instructions for how to live when he's not physically with them anymore. He's still going to always be with them, just like he's always with us, but his body, his person is not going to be with them anymore because he's going to go back up to heaven. So he's giving them instructions, and we'll read our Bible story in a second, but basically the story is go into all the world and tell people about me. And that's what Jesus is saying. So tell people about Jesus. So let's read our Bible story. It's from, like I said, the book of Matthew, chapter 28, verses 16 through 20. And you can see our Bible story. There is Jesus, and he's telling all his disciples and all his followers the final instructions that he gives them before he leaves. So let's read our Bible story. The Great Commission. The disciples went to a mountain in Galilee to wait for Jesus. Mary Magdalene and Mary told the disciples that Jesus was alive. We remember that from a couple weeks ago. When Jesus appeared to the disciples, they saw him and worshiped him. Jesus said, "God has given me power over everything in heaven and earth." Jesus gave the disciples instructions to share the good news about him with the world. Jesus said, "Go to all people and teach them about me. Baptize them. Teach them to love one another and to do all the other things I have taught you to do. I will be with you always, wherever you go, for all time." Jesus was telling the disciples that they needed to share what we as Christians and followers of Jesus call the good news. We're called to share God's love and the story of Jesus and the story of how Jesus is alive with everyone, with the world. That's what the world means, is just share it with everyone. So there's two big things from this story that if you don't remember anything else from this lesson on the Great Commission, remember these two things. One is that Jesus tells us to share the good news with the whole world, that he is alive and that God loves everyone. And the other thing is that Jesus is always with us wherever we go, whatever we do. And that means that even though during this time when we've been at home, staying safe, that Jesus is with us at home too. He's with us no matter what. And we want to celebrate Jesus and God's love for us and for the whole world. And that's part of the good news story that Jesus tells us to go share, is that Jesus is with us all the time, and we know that, but not everyone knows that. Jesus is with everyone else too, all the time, and maybe some people just don't even know it. And so that's something of what Jesus tells us to share. That's the good news, is that Jesus is with everybody all the time, and God loves everybody all the time. And I think that's a pretty awesome thing to celebrate. So we're going to transition to our craft today, and our craft is a super fun one. It's one of my faves. It is about the world, since Jesus says, share with the world the good news. So we're gonna make a world. So you need a coffee filter and then some markers, blue and green markers, and you just scribble all over your little coffee filter. And it doesn't have to even look like the world at all. Mine definitely does not. It just pretend the green is land and the blue is water, and that is good enough. And then we're gonna do something else with it. So when you're done drawing the world on your coffee filter, you take a little cup of water. If you remember, these are the same cups that our caterpillars lived in, and I'm reusing them. So, fun catch, Easter egg. Your cup of water, and you need a paintbrush. And then I'll show you what we're gonna do. So I have a cup of water, paintbrush, earth drawing, and you're gonna dip your paintbrush in the water, and then you're going to just lightly paint your paper. Oh, I forgot to mention, put the coffee filter on a plate or something so it doesn't leak through. It'll get all over the carpet and stuff if you don't. And so you just paint it on, and then you can see the marker kind of bleeds together and looks like a little watercolor earth, doesn't it? So just do this and cover the whole paper. Let it sit on your plate or your hard surface so it can dry, and you don't need to soak it with a lot of water because just a little bit goes a long way. And then you let it dry, and look how fancy that looks. It looks just like the earth, like you would see it from space, like a blue marble. And when it's dry, mine's not dry yet, so I'm not gonna pick it up, but when it's dry, if you want to save it, you can stick it to a paper plate or construction paper or something and kind of frame it out and hang it on the wall or the fridge. And it can remind us to share the good news with people all over the world. Also, how great is it that we are doing an Earth craft the very same week that we celebrated Earth Day. So our craft of the Earth can remind us not only to share the good news with the world, like our Bible story reminds us today, but also to appreciate and celebrate and take care of the earth. How wonderful how that worked out. Okay, so one more thing about our Bible story for today. Jesus tells us to go and share the good news with the world, and that God and Jesus are always with us. And for the first part, when we think about how to share the good news with the world, not only can we tell people how much God loves them, but we can also think to ourselves of our favorite Jesus story. And that can be something that we share with people. When we think about sharing the good news, what do we tell them? We could just tell them our favorite Jesus story. So we've been telling a lot of Jesus stories in our Sunday school time, especially recently because we've had Easter and we had all the Holy Week events leading up to Easter, and last week we had Jesus making breakfast on the beach with the disciples. That one's pretty cool. There's all kinds of Jesus stories, and so maybe if you're with your family right now, or even if you're just by yourself, maybe pause this video for a second and either talk to a family member and tell them about your favorite story of Jesus, or just think to yourself. Maybe you make a note, or you just think to yourself about your favorite Jesus story. And then that Jesus story can be something that you share with others. We always want to share God's love and our words and our actions, but also just sharing our favorite story about Jesus is a really cool way to share the good news. Just like you would tell them about your favorite movie or a cool book you've been reading, you can tell them about your favorite Jesus story. So as always, we're going to say our prayer together while looking at our craft. So let's close our eyes and say our prayer. Dear God, thank you for always being with me. Amen. That is good news, isn't it? That Jesus is always with us, no matter what. No matter if we're on normal schedules and going to school and doing all kinds of stuff, or just like now, how we've been for this past month, and we're being at home, staying safe, and Jesus is here with us in that as well. So I hope you guys had a fun Sunday school time, and I hope you have a great week this next week. Be sure to tune into online worship later. It'll be a really good time to connect with your church family and have some worship. And also, don't forget to tell a friend about our Sunday school hour or invite them to online worship. Just like inviting someone to church or Sunday school when we're having real life, when we actually go to things, you can still invite them online to all our online stuff. So if there's someone that you really miss or you think would really appreciate tuning in with you to any of those things, then ask your parents to invite them, and y'all can share all this together. As always, I love you guys so very much, and I hope you're doing well, and I miss you a lot. And I will see you next week, okay? Bye, friends.